Welcome to Madison City Channel's Know Your Candidate interviews, co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Dane County. I'm your interviewer, Shell Gross, and I would like to introduce Juliana Bennett, running for Alder in District 2. As we begin, I'd like you to give an opening statement about the educational, vocational, and civic experience you have, which qualifies you for this office, and why you are running for Alder.
Sure. Thank you so much, Shell and the League, for having me here today. And thank you to all the viewers tuning in to engage in our local election. Over the past 2 years, it has been a joy to serve Madison Common Council as a downtown alder. And really, it seems like just yesterday when I was here with the League 2 years ago doing the Know Your Candidates. So I'm glad to be here again. I'm glad to say that I've kept my campaign promises. A bit of backstory about me. I was born into a working class family. My mom was a nurse and a union member. My dad was a retired veteran and a small business owner. So I learned early on how to maintain the values of the community. So this only strengthened when I came to Madison 7 years ago. I graduated from Madison West High School, began college at UW in 2018. Then I recently graduated with my degrees in real estate and political science in December 2022. But Madison is a very special place where you see this abundance of community where people just want to help out each other out. And I've found that space in the community. But also when I came to UW, I saw that underlying poverty and racial oppression that afflicts our communities. And that's what got me into community organizing. This is the reason why I co-founded the Madison BIPOC Coalition in 2020 during the BLM movement, is the reason why I advocated for and continue to advocate for racial equity and inclusion amongst leaders, amongst university administration, local and state elected officials. And that's why I ran for Alder back in 2021. Basically, I'm running again for the same reasons. We've got a lot done in the past 2 years, but it's not done yet. There's still a lot of projects that are unfinished regarding affordable housing, transportation, sustainability, and that's why I'm running for a second term.
What actions or programs would you support to enhance public safety in Madison? In particular, what is your position on the use of body cameras by Madison police officers?
Sure. So throughout my time on council, I'm proud to say that I'm the only alder to have consistently voted in favor of alternative forms of policing. That means I have consistently voted to increase funding to our CARES unit. And most recently, that looked like a $100,000 increase to our CARES unit. And when reelected, I want to continue to do so. Another thing myself and fellow alders are looking at is how to elevate public health's violence prevention roadmap. It's a very interesting project where public health is working alongside public safety officers, but really it's taking a public health perspective to addressing the disparities that lead to gun violence, that lead to sexual violence. And so by taking a public health approach to violence, I think that's a better way to go about violence prevention. As of right now, I am not supportive of body cameras. This comes from not only from community members telling me about the dangers of body cameras, the racial oppression that comes from that, but also it's a $20 million project that we just don't have money for. So I think there's other ways that we can bring about public safety, ways that bring in community members, and as someone that was a part of the BLM movement and is close with folks that maybe have some distrust of the police, I'm able to bridge that gap on Madison Common Council.
What do you see as the most important environmental issues the city needs to address? And what will be your priorities for council action on these?
I think three things come to mind when it comes to big environmental issues. One, sustainable infrastructure. It's something that we kind of work on in the background, but we need to shed more light on, especially because Madison is growing so rapidly. In the downtown area, in the past 10 years, we've seen 6,000 residents, an increase in 6,000 residents in the downtown area with the luxury high rises. And we need to be discussing how are we including in sustainable infrastructure like green roofs, like solar energy, like having open park areas, like having areas set aside for farming in the city of Madison. And I don't believe we've fully come to that balance yet, but I think that we need to continue to strategically work within our city planning and sustainable development goals to get there. Another issue is continuing to support our bus rapid transit system in all forms of transportation systems. It comes down to an equity issue, especially when I'm talking to residents downtown. I've come to learn that a lot of people don't just live and work downtown. They also work in the periphery areas, and it's extremely difficult to get from downtown to the peripheries. So supporting a good transportation system, and finally, especially downtown, we need to have better recycling and community composting. Every single August, you see just like loads of recyclable items that are left out on the street as trash. And I think that we should have a city program that works to have a really free market that allows people to trade items in a more sustainable manner.
Thank you. What is your position on increasing the pay for alders?
I am a strong advocate for increasing alder pay. And I know it might be counterintuitive. I don't view myself as a career politician. I'm a community organizer at heart. However, I also have, during my time as alder, faced severe housing insecurity. I have faced eviction while being an alder. I have to decide whether or not I'm going to pay rent or buy food. And how can anyone be a good alder? How can we represent the community best if we're struggling ourselves? And what's really frustrating to me about this debate is this idea that we want to have a diverse council, and yet we don't want to provide the funding enough to have a diverse council. During the debate, one alder said, I'm sorry that people are experiencing housing insecurity, but if that's such a problem, then don't run for office. And I think that's a really crappy way to go about local government. Just because you're receiving housing insecurity doesn't mean you shouldn't run for office. It's all the more reason why you should, but also means that we should be able to afford to do this work.
What, if anything, do you think the city should be doing to support economic development?
Economic development is a huge issue. I hope you don't mind if I take a downtown perspective of this. In the downtown area, we've seen the rapid development of our area. I mentioned before how we've been increasing units, but all of it goes to show how the change in environment is changing who can live, work, and do business downtown. We've seen a rise in local businesses being shoveled out and instead bringing in more large national chains. So as Alder, I want to work with the Downtown Madison Inc. with local businesses, with to try to bring in and support local businesses. That means providing funding, providing more small loans, and having more nightlife activities like our Thursday night market, and our pop-up shops on State Street. All of those are ways that we can help maintain a thriving local business environment. And at the end of the day, I think that it's not just businesses that benefit from it, but it's also our residents that want to support these businesses.
Thank you. How do you see racial disparities impacting constituents in your district, and what would you propose to address these?
This is a really good question, because this is like kind of my whole shtick. So, as a queer Black woman, the racial disparities come off very clear to me in our communities. Again, we have the rise in skyrocketing housing rates, which ultimately determines how low-income young people are being forced out of the area. I spoke with someone the other day that lives in District 2 who saw a 12% increase in her housing rate and could no longer afford to live there. I've been speaking with folks and co-op leaders. Many of them are people of color who co-op housing is the only place that they can afford to live downtown Madison. Beyond that, early on, District 2 has all of Langdon. And early on in my college career, I learned that it is not a safe place to be as a young person, not as a young person, but as a woman and as a person of color. And that's why it is so important that we have leadership, that we have alders that understand the racial disparities that afflict our areas and will actively work to use an equity mindset in each and every aspect of our business. I want to revitalize our James Madison Park and Mansion Hill Neighborhood Association and bring in tenants, bring in young people, bring in people of color, and make sure that they have a voice, and make sure that we meet them where they are so that they can have that voice.
What are the most critical issues that you see facing the people in your district that you may not have talked about yet? And what would you propose to address these?
Sure. I guess I really want to go more in depth into the housing issue. Just because I am a huge housing nerd, and I think that the rise in housing growth places pressures on our entire downtown Madison, not just with housing, but in every single aspect of our system: transportation, sustainability, homelessness. And we see that in District 2, especially where there's a lot of naturally occurring affordable housing, especially in the Mansion Hill neighborhood. And we see landlords let these buildings get dilapidated, fall apart, tear them down, and then replace them with luxury high rises, hence displacing people and rising rent prices. How I want to address that is threefold. One, champion affordable housing policy. I've done so during my time as alder, where we've seen an increase of 5,000 units, 250 of them being affordable units. I want to increase funding for tenants experiencing housing insecurity. I want to also protect alternatives for housing, like our naturally occurring affordable housing, our co-ops, and increase funding to our land banking funds and expand our city TIF policy.
And what would you like to say to the viewing audience as we complete this interview?
Sure. Once again, thank you so much to the league. And thank you so much, Shell, for interviewing me today. And thank you to all the viewers. I'd like to say that I have both legislative experience and lived experience. I have 2 years under my belt as an alder. I know the system and can hit the ground running on April 4th once elected to continue working for your needs. I believe that I am the best person for this race because I also have the lived experience. I know what it's like to be in your shoes and face housing insecurity and not know how I'm going to pay rent or buy food. And I think all of these experiences allow me the ability to relate to you, to work for your needs, and not just work for you, but also work with you. I'm huge on community involvement and community investment. And I want to uplift your voices. So please vote in the primary election. It's February 21st. And then hit it back again in the general April 4th. Thank you so much for your time.
I want to thank Juliana for speaking with us and the viewing audience for taking the time to know your candidates. I want to remind everyone, as Juliana just did, the primary election day is Tuesday, February 21st, and the general election is Tuesday, April 4th. As with every election, please vote. On behalf of Madison City Channel and the League of Women Voters of Dane County, thank you for joining us.